Hello everybody. Today I want to talk to you about using Zoom. This online conferencing app is used so that many people can come together for a variety of meetings, including classes, workshops, and doctor's appointments. This may seem very intimidating right now, but I wanted to let you know that we are all in this together and we will navigate this new process together. I would like to remind you all that we are all new at this. That means that there may be some growing pains in this learning process. Meetings may take a little bit longer to set up because we are all learning, and that's okay. All of us, hearing, deaf, and interpreters alike, are new to this process of meeting on Zoom. But we will get used to it. Zoom has instructional videos on how to use their platform, but this video is more about etiquette and social interaction on Zoom with interpreters. This is to help calm your anxiety about using Zoom. When you join a meeting on Zoom, the host will send you a link. Using that link, you can enter the meeting. Sometimes it'll open up right away, and you'll see many people joining on your screen. Sometimes you might have a pop-up message telling you to wait for the meeting to start. There's nothing for you to do at this point except for wait. If the meeting time seems to be running late or not starting at the time that you thought, check in with your team of point of contact for the meeting. Check in with those in charge for coordinating services as well to make sure that you are all on the same page. Next, I want to talk about the etiquette for using Zoom. If you're feeling unsure of how to frame yourself or what is appropriate attire for this kind of platform, don't worry, I've got you covered. Place yourself in the center of the screen. Be sure that you are not too far vertically or horizontally. We want to be able to see you. From the waist up and centered is perfect. Let me show you an example of what not to do. This here is not appropriate because there's a lot of empty space above my head and my signing will be cut off. We don't want that. This framing right here is perfect with just a small amount on either side. Now that we've talked about space, I'm sure you're all wondering about my background. I know that I failed today because it's not dark or contrasting, but I don't have any other options right now, and that's okay because it's a quiet background. It's not cluttered or messy or distracting. Having a quiet background is good for the participants in the Zoom meeting because they will not be distracted by a messy background. Another etiquette tip is if you are not talking during the meeting, be sure to mute your microphone. This can lessen the amount of distraction for the meeting participants as well. Next to the microphone, there is a video mute button. If you enable this button, the others in the meeting will not be able to see you. What they will be able to see is a black box with whatever name you chose to type in when you joined the Zoom meeting. You also have an option to hide all of those who have muted their videos, if you would like. You can do this by clicking the drop-down in the top corner of their video and hitting Hide All Video Muted Participants. If you want to be sure to continuously see one participant for the full duration of the meeting, you can take advantage of the pin option. This option keeps the person you want to see on the screen. Another topic we're going to talk about is screen sharing. If a facilitator or another person in the meeting wants to share their screen with you, all of the people that you have been seeing in grid view are moved to the side or the top of your screen, depending on the kind of computer you have. You may not be able to see all the participants in the meeting. This means for a meeting that uses sign language interpreters, the interpreter will not be able to be seen. Be sure to warn the deaf consumer that you will be sharing something so they know to pin the interpreter. Facilitators could also share their screen for a moment before going back to grid view to continue their meeting, whichever may be best for the meeting situation. We encourage facilitators to set up a process for turn-taking and discussion. Turn-taking in an in-person meeting is a lot more fluid than in a virtual meeting. Using an interpreter can also complicate the process. Implementing a turn-taking process can lessen interruptions and help all consumers know who is speaking and whose turn it is to talk. We encourage you all to participate by using the chat box. Another great tip is also hiding participants who have muted their videos. You can also set up the screen so the facilitator and the interpreter can be side by side. The facilitator can allow people to participate by monitoring the use of the chat box. When the person is called on to comment, they can unmute their video, allowing everyone to see who is asking the question. This will help the flow and pace of the meeting. This is also a great tool for accessibility because the deaf consumer can see who's asking a question and all the participants can see as well. They can also see the interpreter at the same time. After the question is asked, the person can mute their video again. Using this form of structure for meetings ensures a well-organized conversation. That is the structure I encourage you all to use for turn-taking. For people who are leading the meeting, I encourage you to be mindful of two things. The first is to be mindful of how and when you share your screen. This can disrupt what people are seeing in the meeting. When someone is used to looking at an interpreter and then all of a sudden a screen is shared, the interpreter can get lost in the mix. Deaf consumers must use the interpreter at all times. The deaf consumer might have forgotten to pin the video and needs to take a moment to go find where their interpreter is on the screen. Give them time for this process. Allowing those few extra moments will help avoid that situation. The second thing to be mindful of is while sharing a screen is a great tool for showing information, providing more time for the consumers to view the information and look back at the interpreter can be very beneficial. An extra moment for this can help a lot. The deaf person cannot see the information and also watch the interpreter at the same time. Periodically throughout your presentation, give a few moments for explanation. For interpreters, teaming while using Zoom can seem daunting. Typically, in-person teams can work together freely with an open process because they're right next to each other. But now, interpreters aren't next to each other. They're in separate places, and this has made a challenge for people to team. We have come up with a few creative ways to team together. One of these ways is taking advantage of the chat box. Make sure that you are chatting privately with your team instead of typing to everyone. Clicking on the receiver's name in the chat box will pull up the rest of the names in the meeting. From that, you can select who you want to send your message to privately. Both interpreters must choose who they want to chat with. If you don't do this, the rest of the participants will see what you're saying, so be careful. Sometimes, meetings have a large number of participants. This may feel like too many on the screen. Interpreters have a few different options in this situation. Interpreters can both keep their video on so everyone can see both of them at the same time, or another option is for one of the interpreters to mute their video to help keep distraction low. When it's time to switch, they will inform the facilitator they are switching and both turn their videos on or off, respectively. Another option is you can hide all participants with muted video. This way, you can only see the facilitator and interpreter. For this kind of setup, the interpreter must inform the facilitator of the switch. Then, the now off interpreter will leave the screen and the on interpreter will appear. This also applies to the situation where everyone has their videos on. When interpreters have to switch, they must tell everyone involved so they can find the other interpreter to look at before the meeting continues. It all depends on the best process for the situation, but those are just some ideas. Another approach to teaming might be to have Zoom open on one device and a secondary device set up next to it. You can use a secondary device to directly communicate and support each other's processes while you're teaming without disrupting the meeting on Zoom, if you are comfortable with that. It's really up to you. And finally, it's important for interpreters to take care of themselves, especially with this kind of work. I know that interpreters who work in the community are used to going to many different environments and figuring out in the moment what is best placement for them and whether they should sit or stand. Every scenario is different, but now we all have to interpret virtually, which may make you feel like you have to sit in front of a computer to interpret. Remember that you can stand or sit or even kneel if you would like. You have to make your environment fit your needs as an interpreter. A standing desk might be a great option for you to switch back and forth between standing and sitting to keep variety in your work. You can choose to stand or sit the whole time. It's up to you. I'm just mentioning these because it is so important for interpreters to take care of themselves. The better prepared an interpreter is, the less influence they will have on a situation. We all know that our work is directly impacted by our actions and emotions. If the needs of an interpreter are met, the interpretation will be more successful. That means everyone will have a good experience. However, if an interpreter is feeling uncomfortable or has negative emotions, they will negatively impact the situation. I know that some of you have brought up the concern that VRI might become permanent because we have to use it for everything right now. But don't worry. Our focus right now is on short-term needs and how we can support each other through this unfamiliar and trying time. It's important that we focus on access and meeting needs right now. Eventually, when the situation is over and the world is healthy again, the community will want the same face-to-face experiences that we have had before. I promise. If you have any questions or concerns or are wondering what to do moving forward, please feel free to contact Pi and we will be more than willing to discuss and figure out the best approach for you. Thank you for everything you do for us.